Hello again. Thank you for joining me on our continued quest to solve the secret, a treasure hunt. And I have found some additional clues in the book's narrative that I wanted to share with everyone today. So I've discovered that the Fair Folks titles have subtitles that are written, named in Latin and/or Pig Latin. These clues can be found by translating those subtitles and interpreting them to find out what was meant by those names as confirmers for your clues. And so these clues can only be deciphered and found once you have a proposed solution that is sound and solid and makes sense. And that's when you can start looking for these confirmers in these titles and subtitles. So let's look at the map of all the puzzles that have been found and not found. As we'll start with the ones that I've reverse engineered, which is Chicago, Cleveland, Boston, and I've been working on Montreal and San Francisco. So Chicago is the Chicago World's Ferry, Cleveland is the Culture Vultures, Boston is the Handy Manticore, Toronto is in Montreal, as in addition to the Tupperware Wolves and Union Jack. Again, these are just my theories. The Pentagorgon, the left wing Simp and the right wing Trog, the West Ghost, Phantasmaglory, the Woolly Bully, and the giant economy size, I am convinced 100% are in San Francisco, as I have proven in other videos that I've shown, that I've created. And so with that, let's move on. So now let's look at the names and subtitles for all of these fair folk that I've discussed in all of my previous videos. The Chicago World's Ferry, I believe, is Teddy Roosevelt, and the subtitle Urb Secunda is translated into the Second City, and yes, that is a common nickname for the city of Chicago. The Culture Vultures, I believe El Greco is the subject of the Cleveland puzzle. Although the subtitle is gibberish, I couldn't decipher what is meant by it other than perhaps it refers to Socrates, Pindar, and Apelles. The Handy Manticore is in Boston, and I believe that represents Paul Revere. Again, the subtitle is gibberish-like. I had to use a dictionary to translate what all this means, and I loosely translated it to skill for cutting and washing, and I think maybe it has to do with Paul Revere being a silversmith, where you have to cut and wash metal when you cut it. I don't know, shape it. I don't know. I'm not an expert in silversmithing. The Tarantoker for the Montreal puzzle, I believe, is John MacDonald, and this is an inaccurate one. Like the Second City for Chicago, this translates literally to the city of pigs. However, it's actually Hogtown that the city of Toronto is known for. Tupper Werewolves, I believe, represents Charles Tupper in Montreal for the Montreal puzzle. And this, again, translates literally to domestic boredom. But I don't know what that has to do with the rest of the clues other than just being silly, maybe, in that the use of Tupperware in daily life is domestic boredom. Lastly is the Union Jack, again for Montreal, where the leg eater lamp is at the George Stephen Club. This translates perfectly to British from and it sounds like it's in a statement someone is making, and so yeah, George Stephen is actually from Scotland, so technically he is British from a different place. And then if we look at the Second City, was a literal translation, but Hogtown was an interpretation of the city of pigs, which again proves my point that part of the problem why these treasures have taken so long to be found is because there are a lot of errors, and I hate to use the word sloppy work involved in creating the book, but when you think about a book of this scale, of this size, being rushed to production, mistakes are bound to happen. So moving forward onto the puzzle that's nearest and closest to my heart, which is San Francisco, my hometown. I looked at the previous book clues I used in my previous videos and also found some additional clues. For example, the Pentagorgon, I believe, is General Irvin McDowell. There's a general's residence building at Fort Mason that once was known as McDowell Hall. Fort Mason itself is named after General Richard Barnes Mason. That was a 1st Dragoon. And indeed, the subtitle for the Pentagorgon is Militarism Dragon, which is, I think, just amazing. I had no idea when I developed my Fort Mason proposed solution that this would come to happen, that I would find an actual dragon reference in one of the fair folk. The next one, the left wing simp and the right wing trog, I believe represents Senator David Broderick and Justice David Terry that are part of the 3 high posts. Their subtitle is even more validating. Although Pax Populi is gibberish, it actually does translate to Vox Populi, which is the voice of the people, and that's kind of what senators are, the voice of the people. Then there's Senator Dexteric, which means literally the left and on the right side, but it's actually a common expression of, again, a switcheroo of Dexter and Sinister, which relate to chivalry and heraldry, which again is validating because Justice Terry challenged Senator Broderick to a gun duel and killed the senator. And there's a wood post, a wood sign in Fort Mason that I believe is education and justice for all to see. But again, you can refer to my other videos for more background information. The next one, the West Coast, I believe is John Fremont. His subtitle translates technically, literally to Pacific Flower. However, I think it was meant to be more figurative, like a Pacific narcissist, because they lived on the Pacific coast, obviously, and John and Jesse Fremont were popular rock stars of their day, and so most people think of celebrities as narcissists. Phantasmagory, I believe, is Jesse Fremont, and this one is really fascinating because there is a chapel at Fort Mason that I believe inspired Byron Preiss to use the Madonna of the Rocks painting for image 1, and the literal subtitle translates to Miracle 9 Day. And I literally just put that into Google, a Miracle 9 Day, and what it quickly came up was Novena, which as a recovering Catholic myself, I recognize as a Christian Catholic worship that consists of special prayers or services for 9 consecutive days. So I was like, wow, this is all tying together. This is so cool. The next one is the Woolly Bully. I believe this is General Fred Funston. Again, the literal translation is gibberish. This is Pig Latin, just making regular words sound like Latin by adding letters. But it loosely translates to, like, what I think it translates to is extreme patriotism for God the Father. This is the best I could come up with. And General Funston was a warmonger, despised by Mark Twain for his treatment of Chinese immigrants. The next one is the Giant Economy Size, I believe also General Fred Funston. Although the subtitle translates to let buyer, caveat emptor, we all know that expression as let the buyer beware. So in addition, an additional clue I found is that the fair folk are cross-referenced throughout the book. Why? So the first clue I found says that the culture vulture hangs out with the phil orc and Tarantoger. And so the culture vultures I've established are in Cleveland. The Philharmonic orc I did not go into detail in previous videos, but I'm convinced that this is in Chicago, and it represents the etchings of Mozart and Beethoven on the Opera Hall building across the street from where the treasure was found. Again, the Tarantoger that we just discussed is for the Montreal puzzle, and as you can see, Toronto, Chicago, and Cleveland all close together. Why did Byron Preiss feel the need to be this specific? If it meant nothing and was irrelevant, I believe it was a clue and it was intentional to help us along with the treasure hunt. Now, the second one that I found says the Woolly Bully, the right-winged Trog, and the Pentagorgon all hang out. Wow, what a coincidence that those are all of the fair folk that I chose for the San Francisco puzzle, or that I believe pertain to the San Francisco puzzle. And so you can, look at the previous screen that I showed, and you will see that these are all tied together. And if you look at my previous videos, you will see how I go into detail about how they are interconnected. They are all walking distance of each other. Lastly, I want to end on addressing the naysayers. There are so many different people on so many different Facebook groups, websites, blogs, you name it, that argue about the validity of there being clues in the book and insist that there's no such thing. We're all imagining this. But I ask you, why would anybody go through this level of pain? There was a lot of work deciphering these names. Who took the time to be that creative? It was all for naught. With that said, please leave your comments in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.